Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting. This is a regular meeting. It is Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. It is 9:21 a.m. This session is set to go until noon. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue, room 110 for public virtual attendance. You may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board for the last day. And Vice Chair Ty Menser in the boardroom, as well as Commissioner Wayne Fournier. And joining via Zoom, we have Commissioner Gary Edwards, as well as Commissioner Emily Klaus. In the boardroom, we have Assistant County Manager Rob Gelger and Interim County Manager Robin Campbell. And we'll start our meeting off today with Homeless Strategies Update.
Commissioner Mejia.
Before we get started, I will pass this to the County Manager.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to address concerns that the agenda for both this morning and this afternoon have been properly posted. They have been on our website since Thursday, which is more than adequate time to post for this meeting. So all the materials are also available.
Question?
Yes.
What is the requirement? 24 hours?
24 hours.
24 hours notice posted on the website and front door or something to that effect?
Posted. I don't think we have to post on the front door because this is not a special meeting, but we do need to post online.
Okay, and that's been done since Thursday?
Yes.
Thank you.
What was the concern?
There was a concern that the meeting was not properly noticed.
Meaning,
That
wasn't
it
there
had
at
not
all?
been posted and available to the public. I have not received those concerns directly, but I am addressing them since apparently they have been.
I was
raised.
personally looking at it on the website at 8 o'clock yesterday morning, so I know it's been over 24 hours.
It's been there. Thank you, Commissioner.
Perfect. Thank you. If there are no more questions on that subject, we'll start with Homeless Strategies Update. And is Keely here?
Yes, she is.
Yes, there we go. Hey, Keely, go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. I have a few updates for you today. First and foremost is the point-in-time annual homeless census is occurring on Thursday, January 25th. That is the night of the count. There will be a number of activities and events on Friday, January 26th, including a Homeless Connect event at Sergio's Day Center off of Martin Way between 1 and 5 p.m. There will be several senior services events. There will be a youth and young adults event at Community Youth Services Rosie's Place between 11 and 3. And we will be having a number of other activities going on that day. We will be conducting the count over 7-day period, which is a HUD standard and it's acceptable, which means that over the next 7 days, when surveys are given, the question will be asked, where were you sleeping or where were you staying on the night of January 25th? So that is coming up very soon. I want to thank all of the members of the public and Thurston County staff for the donations that have been offered up. I know that there's a bin at the atrium and at the courthouse, so I just want a round of thanks for that. Also, if any of you would like to participate or volunteer to engage in any of the activities for the point-in-time count, reach out to myself or Elisa Sparkman or Ariel Benson in our office, and we would be glad to connect you to a survey for volunteering. On right-of-way news, we had a meeting this morning with our partners at the state, the Washington State Patrol, Washington Department of Transportation, and Commerce. The next camp that will be cleared or cleaned or relocated will actually be in the city of Lacey on Department of Ecology property near St. Martin's University. That group of people will be slowly moving into various housing units that are available. Currently, that's at Maple Court. Right now, there are 118 rooms at Maple Court. Until yesterday, we heard that there were 129 residents in Maple Court, but in all actuality, there are about 108. So there are a number of open rooms available at Maple Court at this time. However, they are not able to be filled by anything other than right-of-way activities. And so until Desmond Drive begins their relocating or sweep or clearing of that encampment, those beds will remain open. And we will also be making a recommendation this week that we declare a hazardous weather event for cold and inclement weather. There will be snow over the weekend and extremely cold temperatures starting from Thursday night and going until Monday morning. So we're waiting for approval from the Director of Public Health to move forward with that declaration. And if we are receiving approval, we will move forward with a news release and get our partners rolling and preparing for that event. And other than that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Keely. Any questions? Commissioner Klaus?
Hey, thanks Keely for the info. I was wondering the timeline on the camp in Lacey. What is that timeline?
That is unclear. We did ask for some clarification this morning from City of Lacey. I believe it will be over the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but we were not given clear answers to that question this morning.
Okay, thank you. And is that Desmond by chance?
It is, in fact, Desmond.
Do those residents know that their camp is next on the list? Do you know?
I do not know. I know that Only Map, who's contracted to do right-of-way outreach, has been going out there, and as well as Lacey, their crisis response unit or community, the crew. I don't remember what the acronym is.
I think it's MOT that goes to that camp, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but okay. Thank you so much for the info. I appreciate you.
Yes.
Keely, I'm wondering what the next steps is going to be with Quincy.
With Quinn Street Village?
Yeah.
My understanding, and we haven't had a conversation at the tech team for the Regional Housing Council about Quinn Street for several weeks, but my understanding is that with the Encampment Resolution Program, which is the new acronym ERP for the Right-of-Way Initiative, $500,000, I believe, in operating costs will be supporting Quinn Street Village to hold spaces in the tiny homes for people who are being removed from right-of-way encampments. So I have not had direct communication with Darian Lightfoot on what the status is on that, but we did address it with Department of Commerce this morning, again, with not direct understanding of what this what is happening next.
Thank you, Keely. Are we partnering with United Way this time around for the for volunteers for the point in time count?
We are, in fact. We've been working with them to identify volunteers, and also they're putting together hygiene kits for us as well again. So definitely partnering closely.
Great, thank you so much. I'm not seeing any other hands.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No, it came from something that she said in response to your question, which you used an acronym, Encampments Resolution what?
Program,
And that's the new terminology for what we've been calling the Right-of-Way Initiative?
yes, yes. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I first heard that.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Keely. I'm not seeing any more hands. So we'll move on to the Habitat Conservation Plan.
Good morning, Joshua Cummings, Director, Community Planning, Economic Development. This is your monthly update on the Habitat Conservation Program review. And these are items that, permits that would have been stopped or slowed down significantly if not for this program. So you can see by the paper that I believe the Assistant County Manager just handed out, it should have January 9th at the top. If it doesn't, it's just a bit old, but here's the update as of today. HCPR applications submitted, 175. And the big takeaway there is application reviews complete, 145. And so then we still have some in review and a few that have been withdrawn. And then the second really big number to see is the mitigation fees received. And you can see that the total there is about $850,000 from all of the permits that have been processed. but a big bulk of that came from a large subdivision that paid over $500,000. And so just like the commissioners 5 years ago had asked for it to work out, it is doing that. The mom and pops are paying a small portion while the big developers are paying their fair share as well. And those are the numbers. Any questions on those?
Questions?
Is that, the whole, like, is the 175 and the 145, is that like from the beginning of when we started, which was,
That's correct.
okay,
Yeah, like April of 2023.
perfect, thank you.
And that is a good question, commissioners. If you'd like, we could start the clock back over and have it year to date, and then have the final 2023 numbers in one column, and then a running total for 2024 in the second column. That'd be useful.
Over time, I mean, like, definitely, since there was that backlog, it's good to see that backlog clearing out, but then as we go forward, then seeing how it goes, like, on an ongoing basis is probably useful.
Sure.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
I do have a comment if anybody doesn't have, if we're about to end this particular segment and nobody else has questions.
Any additional questions on this item? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I guess I'd like to point out a couple of things. First of all, I want to compliment staff on having worked through this over the last, I don't know, it's been almost 10 years, I guess. And finally coming to this conclusion. I want the public to know, though, that even though staff has done a great job, this is a requirement through the federal process, and this additional cost, although it's picked up by a major developer, for an example, and individuals in a smaller amount, it continues to add to the cost of housing in our community in a more unusual way than other jurisdictions are faced with. And the Mazama pocket gopher, just so the public knows, lives all the way from the California area well into British Columbia and all the way from the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. And it's just real unfortunate that we were picked by the federal government to run this social experiment, I guess. And I'm just gonna let it go at that. It's costing our taxpayers more money than anyone else in the country. So just want to point that out. Thank you very much, ma'am. And thank you to the staff for a great job.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. So next is the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for a meeting of January 9th, 2024. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Vice Chair Fournier, and then there will be the approval of the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 agenda. We'll start our presentation off with a Martin Luther King Jr. Day proclamation.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. The agenda today will begin with the proclamation for Martin Luther King Day, and it is my understanding that we have invited guests, Katie?
Two guests. Pastor Reeves and Dr. Jackson.
So if you didn't pick that up, Dr. Jackson and Pastor Reeves.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
No update at this time.
Okay, any questions for the county manager?
I have a quick question, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Yeah. That would be, because things have been rather hectic around here, we haven't had any discussions on this budgetary issue from last year that we mentioned. Is there any chance I could talk on the voucher issue? any chance I could talk with somebody that could help me understand that before the meeting?
On the voucher list, that's the
Yeah,
next item on the agenda.
Yeah, it's coming up, and I just wonder, you know,
I
because it
have
was
an
so
answer
hectic.
for you.
Pardon?
I have an answer for you.
Oh, you do? Okay. Oh, well, I didn't know if you had it or not. Good.
We're not there yet.
Okay, good enough. We'll wait. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, so we'll move on to consent items. There's item 3A and 3B, if their approval of the voucher list.
Yes, so your question
go.
is on item 3A.
Well timed.
And it had been regarding, on page 40, a number of payments to DM Ventures. So those items are all rent. It's our monthly rent payment for the atrium in Chandler Court and the little parking lot across the street. And it's separated like that because of accounting rules. We have to separate it. We've got to separate the payment, any payments that are considered interest, even though we are not buying or have a loan against this building. GASB is government accounting standards require that we separate it and report it in that way.
Okay, just a quick follow-up. When, on the coding of, like LO10 or LO14 or LO9, do those have separate distinctions, like maybe one of them's interest?
One of them is lease, I believe those are lease payment numbers. So lease payment 14, it's the 14th payment out of however many we've committed to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any additional questions on the voucher list? Commissioner Edwards, are those okay to stay on the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We'll move on to item 3C, which from Pretrial Services. And we had some discussion on this item last week, and this is to approve the reclassification of Pretrial Services Officer to a Program Manager.
Right. So this item creates a supervisor position within pretrial services. It is reclassifying a current vacant position. The manager would oversee workload, quality assurance, and other work product from the people who will report to that person. At the top of the range, it is an increase of $987 per month, and pretrial services will absorb any additional cost this year.
Thank you. Carrie, anything you would like to add?
Thank you for that. I think we discussed last week, this is an item that has been kind of under discussion for a couple of years, was managed through a temporary pay increase for an individual who departed the county last month. And then we also talked last week about how this role really is instrumental in the implementation of the public safety assessment, which is a validated pretrial risk assessment tool. Our county as a whole, across kind of all the law and justice offices and departments, has made a big commitment to implementing this tool and having that supervisor position in place. Frankly, I don't know that I would have launched the public safety assessment had I not had someone in a supervisor role at the time, and sustaining it without a supervisor would be extremely challenging for the team.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
Just a comment, ma'am.
Go ahead.
I believe, although this could be up to $900, it might not be. That's going to be the top of the range, is the way I understand this. So it doesn't automatically give that big of a jump. And the other piece of that is this will add to the baseline for future years to our general fund budget. And there was one other issue I was going to point out, but Maybe Commissioner Mentzer's got it. He came up with this last week too, I think so. No, I'm good. Thank you, ma'am.
And I think the other note too is that when this had been proposed originally during the budget process, the plan was for pretrial services to absorb the costs for the entire biennium, not just this year. And Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
That's correct.
So yes, add to base, but absorb and deal with that until potentially 26.
Any questions? Okay,
Sorry.
we'll move on to department items then. Item 4A from the Commissioner's Office is the 2024 election of officers for the Board of County Commissioners.
So these items are, as you discussed at your November 30 planning session. The board will confirm Commissioner Mentzer as the chair of the Board of County Commissioners and Commissioner Fournier as the vice chair of the board for this year.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Commissioner Mentzer, to get warmed up, do you want to do the rest of this agenda since you'll be taking over?
I think that it's your last morning. I don't want to pinch on you, Commissioner Mejia. You're savoring this last morning.
Okay. Very well then. We'll go on to item 4B, which is the 2024 Commissioner Representation and Assignments on Boards and Commissions.
Yes, this item also was discussed at your November 30 planning session, and this will confirm the appointment of commissioners to all the various boards and commissions around the county that you serve on.
Any questions on any of those?
Commissioner Klaus and I jumped the gun yesterday and switched the climate meeting, but I thought this had already been done, but I think we both,
It's all right.
I think she did a good job.
No worries. I think me and Commissioner Edwards did the same thing too. With SWAC. Okay. Item 4C is a service agreement with King County to fund Switch is On campaign.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Klaus had her hand up.
Oh, so sorry. Commissioner Klaus, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I don't have the agenda sitting in front of me. I was wondering if the appointments to the committees includes the Planning Commission, or is this just for the commissioners?
This is just for the commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we'll be discussing appointments to the Planning Commission later on in the agenda this morning.
Okay, thank you. I'll have an update on that when we get to it. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay, so service agreement with King County is Rebecca.
Yes, so we got it. So this item, you may recall from a briefing on November 29th, 3 counties, King, Pierce, and Thurston, and 3 cities, Seattle, Tacoma, and Olympia, are partnering in a little consortium that will focus on consumer education for home electrification and energy efficiency. This particular item authorizes the agreement for the Thurston to participate and provides authority for $25,000 toward the project that has been selected, Switch On. It is both software and a campaign, and the total cost is $225,000. Thurston County's share is $25,000, and Rebecca can fill in additional information.
Thank you, Robin. You said it all. Yeah, this is an outreach campaign and an educational website about home electrification and energy efficiency. It's being launched across the 3-county region with King and Pierce County, and the cities, the county seats in each are also contributing. It will be a service agreement through the end of 2024 to run this regional campaign with some events as well as the educational website. And the thought is, and the hope is, that later this may be taken up at the state level, and that there's a bill in the legislative session being introduced that may create a statewide building energy navigators. So as far as beyond 2024, this may be something that's run at the state level, but right now it gives us the chance to get in and pilot this and be part of the initial rollout. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment.
Go ahead, sir.
I've been contacted by a constituent that expressed concern that this particular action, as it heads towards removing gas appliances from residences, is going to create quite an additional load on our electric grid. And there doesn't seem to be a matching correlation of energy production as far as electricity to make up the difference. And they were concerned that this could lead to brownouts if we don't have a balanced plan moving forward. So I just bring that out. I think it's always still worth looking at how we can do better and come up with options. But it is an issue that I would hope would be addressed by this consortium, very much like, we're just trying to do better. So let's have a balanced approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, any response to that?
Just appreciate the comment. I'll make a note of it. I think that Puget Sound Energy is considering factors. They're the utility that has authority over the grid and has the mandate to clean their grid using clean energy according to the state's Transformation Act, Clean Energy Transformation Act. So, we'll be in touch with them. We are obviously partnering with Puget Sound Energy as we roll this out, so.
Would it be appropriate sometime in the future to invite them in to present on their efforts to meet the oncoming needs?
If that's something the board would be interested in, we can
I would be
look into
very
doing that.
interested in that, because that's exactly what that constituent was concerned with, that we're moving forward. That wasn't his complaint. His complaint was, how are we going to be able to sustain that additional electric?
Yeah, and as we partner to ramp down one aspect, to hear from PSC what their 20-year plan is,
Right.
would be
So
appropriate.
if they've got light issues coming up of production, I think that should always be talked about when we're talking about balancing this out. And if there is no production, does it really make sense to cut one end and not increase the other end?
So I have a meeting tomorrow afternoon with
Christine Culpus?
Christine Rampa. So I'll be, I can certainly talk to her about coming and meeting with the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item from Central Services. Item 5A is the contract award, voter registration center.
Yes, this item, the board approved going out to bid for construction and renovation at the voter registration center in Mottman. The county received 11 bids, and our low bidder is about $300,000 under the engineer estimate, so that's very positive. And that includes all of the alternatives that the auditor had asked for Approving the contract at this time keeps us on track to complete the project by August of 2024. Rick is here to answer any questions that you may have about this project.
Questions?
Hope it all works, Rick.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Yep, it's actually going very well. The permit process is moving forward. Everything seems to be falling into place for this particular project, so the team is doing a great job.
And we announced the contractor during the meeting when we accept the bid.
Well, the contractor
Constructing.
is right here.
Yeah, that name always throws
Construct
me
Inc.
off.
Good. So, very happy that this is moving along. Did you say that something is stricken out?
Oh, no, when constructing, like, it throws me
Oh.
off because it doesn't sound like it's naming the contractor. It's just, when I
Oh.
read it, it's like, oh, just the word.
Okay. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to community planning and economic development. Item 6A is to set a public hearing, A-25 Forest Lands Conversion Code Update.
Yes, so this item is to set a public hearing and invite public comment on the A-25 Forest Lands Conversion Code update. The development of this code included outreach to community organizations. The Planning Commission held 2 work sessions and a public hearing, and recommends this action on a 5-2 vote. And the Board of County Commissioners held work sessions on November 2nd and 29th. And I see Dana here if you have any questions about the update.
Questions?
None.
Okay. Oh, okay. Item 6B is request for proposals, Thurston County Working Lands Conservation Strategy.
This item asks for approval to release an RFP for professional services that will assist the county in developing a working lands conservation strategy. The strategy will include recommendations for programs such as transfer of development rights, purchase of development rights, an update to our Conservation Futures program, and the open space tax incentive programs. All of these will be recommendations to the board, and the contract is using grant funds. And Ashley is here if you have questions.
Awesome.
Any questions? No? Okay. Moving on to emergency services, item 7A. It's marked as 7B there, but it's 7A. It's to execute contract for year 23 emergency management performance grant.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So this grant is, to accept federal funds that flow through the Washington State Military Department that emergency management will use for planning, outreach, and education to prepare the county for future emergencies. And Ben is here on the screen if you've got questions.
Questions? Okay. No questions.
Commissioners, just given the dollar amount and as a sort of an ongoing grant program, I was wondering if the board would consider moving this to the consent agenda.
Well, that'd be great for me.
I'm okay with that. Any concerns? Is everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move this item to the consent agenda then. So information technology, item 8A is the renewal of Microsoft support agreement for technical assistance.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is an annual agreement that the county enters into with Microsoft Unified Support Services. And this contract assists the county with support of all of the various Microsoft systems that the county relies on. This is a sole source contract. It has been approved by the internal auditor.
Thank you. Any questions on this item?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
So the payment on this is that 60-40 split, basically?
Yep.
Okay, just wondering about the fund. Thank you, ma'am. Just the cost of doing business.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Moving on to Public Health and Social Services, item 9A is to approve amendment number 1 of the Developmental Disabilities Administration County Program Agreement.
So this contract is from Department of Social and Health Services. The state of Washington awards funding to the county. This is an increase in the ongoing contract. The increase amount is approximately $1.4 million, and the money is used for training and assistance to people in our county with developmental disabilities. We have Mark on screen if you have questions about the grant award.
Thank you. Questions for Mark?
Yes, I have some questions.
Go ahead, sir.
I just want to make sure I get this right. It's a increase of 1.4 million?
Correct.
And do we have a plan to assist the community affected with that $1.4 million? I guess that would be my question to Mark.
Yes, Commissioner Edwards, thanks for having me on. This past year, the legislature made a couple of changes to policy. So one, it raised the cap that we can pay employment providers from $75 an hour to $105 an hour. It also raised the amount that the counties paid for admin services from 7% to 10% of the contract. The other change that they made was they've allowed dual services. So now a client can get not only employment services, but community inclusion services. So that's raised the cost of services in the county. And it also allows us to work with more clients. So those are the 4 big changes this past year that this money is going to go towards.
Okay, I just want to end with thanking you and your staff for watching out for these folks. And it sounds like that's also the cost of doing business increase. Somebody is working on covering it. It doesn't come out of our general fund. Seems like that's a pass along from the state.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you for all you do for those folks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mark, I do have a question over something you mentioned, that dual services wasn't allowed. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. In the past, a client could only get employment services or community inclusion. Last year, the legislature changed that so they can have dual services now. So that increases the amount of costs in the county when they have both services simultaneously.
That's just so surprising to me that, I didn't know that, and the fact that that wasn't allowed. Have you seen an increase in folks needing those dual services in Thurston County?
In Thurston County, I think we've only seen about maybe 24 people take advantage of it, and across the state, it's about the percentage is about the same. So there's not a huge increase yet, but this year and next will really tell us if the word's getting out to the clients through DDA, Developmental Disabilities Administration.
Thank you, Mark.
You bet.
Okay. Next on the agenda is item 9B, which is the Treatment Sales Tax Community Grant Awards.
Yes, Commissioners, this item was the subject of a work session held on November 29th. The board had many follow-up conversations about these grant awards and in the end gave direction to prepare contracts with the Providence Southwest Washington Foundation, Interfaith Works, and the Family Support Center of South Sound. The contracts total approximately $642,000 for a 2-year period, each year being just right around $300,000, which is the amount that the board put in the budget for these grants. And we have Shaylin on the screen to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Shaylin, anything you would like to add?
Nope, that was a great summary from Robin. I'm happy to provide more background information at the afternoon meeting.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, sir.
Shaylin, is this the one that ends up being contrary to what the committee had recommended? There's some adjustments in there?
Yes.
Is that right? And you're going to explain that possibly at the meeting this afternoon? Or do you want to make comments?
I can. What would you prefer?
Well, I'd just like to have the public know, and I think they do watch. I know those folks that we support with this fund, at least I know they follow our meeting, and it will be televised, right? So
yes.
Okay.
Maybe that would be more appropriate. If a Reader's Digest version, because we've got quite an agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions on this item? Shaylin, I did have a question in regards to, just as a follow-up item. When the board made this decision, I had requested information on, as we're pulling funding away from Monarch's Children for the advisory board's recommendation, kind of what the impact of that was going to be. I was wondering if you were able to get a response to that question.
Yes, I can follow up in an email with that.
Would that not be relevant information before tonight's meeting? For everybody, or?
Yeah, that's my follow-up question to that too, sir.
I'll beat you.
Yeah, you did, okay.
Yeah, I can definitely get that to you before this afternoon.
I guess above and beyond that, my concern is that we have it so that the public can hear what we're going to be referring to. So I just think it's always good to let the public in on the discussion when we're going to take a vote. So I don't know how you want to do that. If you want to do that with a short dissertation of what that email might disclose today or now versus this afternoon.
Okay.
I think it's all pertinent.
Perhaps she could email that to the commissioners, and if a commissioner wants it included in the public record, they could do it during the meeting. Is that
Sure, that would
fair?
be, yep, sounds good to me. Thank you.
I'll get that to you before this afternoon.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Klaus?
Thank you. I just wanted to speak up a little here since I was the one who kind of pushed for that change from Monarch to Interfaith. And as a follow-up, I did receive an email from a constituent who happens to be on that advisory committee, the TST advisory committee, with some really good recommendations for potential changes to this process in the future. Off the top of my head, I can't recall all of their suggestions, but I thought they had a lot of good stuff to say. So, Shaylin, if you could take back to the advisory committee that I really do appreciate their hard work. I know that it was a lot of effort, a lot of tears shed during the process, and I do appreciate all of the work that the committee put into this. And I am looking forward to future conversations with committee members to understand how this process impacts them and how we can support a smoother process moving forward.
Thanks, Emily. I'll bring that back to them.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions on this item? Okay. Moving on to Public Works. Item 10A is to execute a license and indemnity agreement number 23-113466 for a private septic line.
Yes, this item is, as you stated, for a private septic line. And the line will be crossing the county right-of-way. So Thurston County Code requires, in these circumstances, that the private property owner execute an agreement with the county to accept responsibility for any liability or work that should come up as a result of having the septic line under the county right-of-way. It has been reviewed by legal, and we believe it's ready to go. And Todd is here to answer any questions that you may have about this item.
Questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Go ahead, sir.
I know this is maybe not an everyday activity, but I think this is a good example of the county trying to cooperate with a citizen to put together a septic system that is the least damaging to our environment by allowing this activity. I don't know how often it happens, but it's happened quite a few times since I've been a commissioner, where we've just went the extra mile in trying to solve the problem and with not having it be a burden to the taxpayers of Thurston County. Thank you. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay. We'll move on to our next item, which is the county manager's update. We'll go through our standing items, and after we will have a Board of Health meeting starting at 3:45. With that, we will adjourn our meeting. Any questions? Okay, next on our agenda is the review of the January 16th agenda. So we'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Mejia, which is me, and then there will be the approval of the Tuesday, January 16th, 2024 agenda. There will be an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
Have no update at this time.
Okay. Then on our consent agenda, we have 4 items. And our first item from the auditor's office is the approval of the voucher list.
Yes, Commissioner, this is the voucher list from the week of December 25th. And I am not aware of any atrium tenant improvement items on this voucher list.
Questions?
No questions.
Okay. Next is item 3B from Community Planning and Economic Development. It's contract amendment with Thurston Regional Planning Council Boundary Review Board.
Yes, this is a contract that the county enters into for the administrative services in support of the Boundary Review Board in Thurston County. State law requires that the county pay the costs of a boundary review board. And we had been doing this in-house, but the county entered into agreement a few years back for TRPC to provide this support. It provides a clear division of duties in working with the boundary review board, and I think it's a bargain for $20,000 a year.
Questions?
Do we have multiple contracts with TRPC for services, or is this?
We do have a variety of contracts with TRPC. This is just one of them.
Any additional questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, moving on with emergency services, 2024 private ambulance license for Northwest Ambulance.
This is the license application for Northwest Ambulance, and I do not know a lot about this item, so Todd is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Ben.
Good afternoon. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, commissioners. This is in front of you for the business license for a new ambulance service in Thurston County, Northwest Ambulance. They will be providing specifically interfacility or in between medical facility transports. They're currently contracted with the multi-care facility, the standalone ED or the off-campus ED that has been opened at Lacey, for transports out of that facility and into other fixed healthcare infrastructure. And the license itself will be limited to that interfacility transport as we move forward, and also limited by the confines of the licensure that'll be passed by the state of Washington, DOH. If you have any other questions, please let me know.
Questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
They pay their $100 application fee, Ben?
Yes, they did. They paid their
Business
$100
license in every community in Thurston County. Do we? Oh, that is interesting.
This was a joke because.
Oh, I'm serious. Do they need business licenses in each community that they serve in Thurston County? And
for Thurston County as a whole, it's a part of the ordinance, and so the licensing fee is specifically for anywhere within the Thurston County confines.
yeah, but if they operate in Olympia, do they have to have a business license in Olympia? Pay some type of B&O tax in Olympia?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Probably, but
We can check on that.
I mean, I know, like some of these contractors come outside the city and they're, well, we got one over here, but we don't need one over here, and then they don't even. I don't know. It's interesting. Just random thought.
Subject to B&O, just based on the type of entity it is where they operate from.
So I will follow up on that question and get an answer to that one.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and moving on with our last item from the clerk's office, a resolution extending the end date for position of judicial information specialist in the Thurston County Pay and Classification Plan, and the extension date is to the end of December 31st, 2024.
So this item it's got a bit of a story. So you may recall in the budget process, when we were extending end dates for the auditor to continue to digitize records. And for the last few years, it's been quite a few years, the auditor has been paying for a position in the clerk's office out of the record fund to also digitize records, historical records. So this project has been going on for quite some time. And when the board was having a conversation with the auditor about budget reductions, the auditor stated that she would need to retain the amount in that fund for her purposes to be able to weather the budget cut. And that she would no longer have the capacity to pay for this position in the office of the clerk. So that's kind of the background. Fast forward to when the board actually made decisions about the amounts of the budget cuts. The cuts were less than anticipated at the time you had the meetings with the various offices and departments. And so when, after the board made final budget decisions, the auditor said that there would be capacity to cover this position in the clerk's office. However, it was past the opportunity to make the change, and neither the clerk nor the auditor let the budget team know that there was this capacity until recently. So I am recommending to the board that you go ahead and extend the end date on this position to continue the digitization project through the end of this year, and continue to pay for the cost of the position from the M&O fund with the agreement of the auditor.
Any questions? I have questions.
No question.
Okay, so this was actually a line item too in the clerk's office, and the board denied that.
Correct.
So why wouldn't this come during a budget amendment? And why is this coming into our agenda now when the board already made a decision in the budget process denying this matter?
Thank you for that question, and I appreciate that approach. The reason that we're bringing this to you now is the position is filled, and it had an end date of December 31 of 2023. HR is asking you today to extend the end date, and then we would do the appropriation during the budget amendment. And the reason that we're asking you to extend this end date now is so that the person who is employed does not lose their job. So if you extend the end date now, we could continue to employ them, and we would fix the budget in the amendment.
Just maybe a quick follow-up on that. Wasn't another piece of this that we thought there was no money going to be available in that fund, but we found out late that in fact there is money in the fund to cover this?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, how late is late?
The budget team was just notified last week when we put this on your agenda.
Is there a reason why we're going to the end of this year? I mean, is there a thought that it's not going to be covered for the second year of the biennium?
We've been doing these project positions on a year-by-year basis.
It's just kind of consistent with how we've been doing it.
Yes.
And that gives the auditor the chance at the end of 2024 to say, we
assess whether
we have a shortfall and we can't continue to fund it for 2025.
Right.
Okay.
I would like to see the budget for that.
Okay.
Even though there were reductions, the auditor was very, I mean, she let us know that, she would need this fund. And so I just want to see the projections of that fund.
Yes,
knowing, and just seeing kind of those reductions and being sure that the fund will be capable of holding this position and that there won't be a request for general fund later on. If we're going to be extending this.
Happy to bring that financial plan to you, and also provide the email that we received from Diana Benson on behalf of the auditor stating that they are in support of this request.
Any other questions? Okay. Then we'll go through our standing items, and we do have a public hearing at 3:30 from Community Planning and Economic Development. It's CPA-16 Agricultural Code Update.
Yes, this item is for a public hearing regarding expanding the long-term agriculture district and specifically the overlay district. And Maya is here on screen to answer any questions that you may have about this item.
We have Ashley, I think.
Oh, sorry, Ashley's in the room.
Ashley, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I did want to clarify, this is actually only for the code update portion, although our briefings on this topic have included discussions around zoning changes and expansion of the district, along with updates to the code. The map pieces, the rezoning component of it, will not come before you until probably May or June of this year. So this is just on the code changes, and those would be to the long-term agriculture zoning district as well as the agritourism overlay district.
I was gonna say, you can put the move to approve on this agenda, but that's assuming that was the whole, I was thinking that was really unambitious to think that we would be passing it all in one swoop.
No maps, no maps.
So that makes more sense.
Questions on this item?
No, ma'am.
Have we received any public comments so far?
Not on the code changes. We might have people show up that are interested in the map pieces. We have tried to be very clear with our communications, but because they've been tied together for so long.
I've had some correspondence, and we talked about it yesterday, I had some correspondence where there was a little confusion on the subjects, and so, yeah, you're right, there might be a little of that, but if we could just, as we tell the story, tell it like from the beginning, usually, well, hopefully.
We're moving this piece forward while we have delays with the map component.
Okay.
And will you or Maya do the presentation at the meeting, at the hearing?
Yes.
Next week?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Okay, and then that will conclude our meeting of January 16th, 2024. Next is proclamations and awards, and we do have a proclamation this afternoon. The proclamation is included in your packet. If you have any corrections, please let staff know for this afternoon.
So could we, I'm sorry, could we go back to the 16th?
Yes.
So I know we need to provide information to the board regarding the item of the clerk, but I noticed that all items on this agenda are on consent. There are no proclamations, there are no department items. We don't expect anything to get walked on for next week. And I think most of these are ready to go. We could move them to today.
We do have a public hearing though, so.
Yeah, but we're gonna have a huge gap of time between, this meeting should take all of maybe 15 minutes. We could move these items to today, or at the pleasure of the board, we could continue with a very short board meeting.
Is there anything?
From my perspective, I'm okay with consent items.
We do have maybe one item for the 23rd as well. I don't know if it should get to a later week, but that's an option as well.
Delay the position for the clerk because of payroll issues, but the other items are not time sensitive. This is just a very short meeting. I don't know if you wanna, it's completely up to you, but in the past when we've had so few items, you've consolidated with a different meeting.
Not a bad suggestion.
I won't be the chair of that, so, for me, I would say hold it, and, what the heck, since we have a public hearing, we'll have to be here anyways, but I'll leave that up to the chair's discretion.
preference from other commissioners?
I'd go with it all together, so it's okay. If I had my druthers.
That's my inclination. It's such a rigmarole to get the whole, board meeting, and it saves staff time and effort to, and allows capacity to do other things if we don't need to have that meeting just to run through a consent approval. So I would be inclined to try to consolidate.
Great. Well, we'll move these items to today, and then,
If that also allows a little more focus to be put on the narrative of that public hearing, because sometimes when we split things up and people show up thinking they're gonna hear about one thing and we're talking, they think the county's pulling a fast one, or, oh, it's all contrived the way they've split it up. So just maybe it creates some more room to, facilitate that discussion.
So then for item D, I'm not ready, so if we're gonna move it to today's agenda, I would ask that it be a department item instead of a consent item.
could do that.
Okay. Proclamations and awards, is that what we're at?
Yep, proclamations and awards. So then it looks like the meeting for January 16th is being canceled. But we will still have a public hearing at 3:30.
Yep.
Madam Chair, are we gonna have, maybe I've forgotten, but last year we went, or last couple of years, we've gone through a schedule of proclamations and awards just to see what we want to do, and especially with 2 new commissioners, it seems like that process needs to happen.
Yes, so that is on your planning,
Okay.
Meeting agenda on Thursday.
Very good.
Did we head or, did you have something?
I do have information for boards and commissions.
That's next, right?
That's next. 1 second. Okay, so any changes to the proclamation this afternoon, please let staff know. Okay, next, moving on to advisory boards and commissions. Go ahead, Katie.
Commissioners, for advisory boards and commissions, the standing applications for the Board of Equalization and Historic Commission have been included for your review. The Historic Commission is recommending appointment as requested. There has been work with PIO to get press releases out regarding vacancies on Board of Equalization as well as other boards and commissions that have openings. We've also received appointment requests for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, Planning Commission, and the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee. Both LTAC and TST are recommending appointments as requested. We can get Jenica Machado and Shailene Sowers available to answer specific questions about each if you have any. The Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees request is for you to affirm the appointment of Dustin Loop as the Grays Harbor representative. Outside of any questions, that's all of the stuff.
Okay, Commissioner Klaus, I know you've been waiting patiently for this item.
Yes, I have some news regarding one of my appointments to the Planning Commission. Robert Vanderpool was appointed last night to the Olympia City Council, so he is no longer available. He was my at-large appointment.
So you will be seeking an appointment for an at-large appointment, or do you have one of these applicants?
Well, I was planning on seeking an at-large appointment, but I have not yet reviewed the applications that we received this week, so I can do that before the meeting this afternoon. And I mean, well, when should I have that decided by? Would it be beneficial to have that decided by this afternoon, or is there some time for me to look into other people?
Yeah, there's time for you to look into other people. Yeah.
We have 7 appointed now, right? Or is it 6?
Yeah, and I'm moving forward with an appointment as well.
I think 7 are seated, so, right?
Yeah.
'Cause you had one, and now she's got one, so that's 8 7 out of 10.
6, 7, yeah, 7.
So there should be, you should have plenty of time, Commissioner, to, I mean, you know, move expeditiously, but it's not like they can't move forward on their business.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sometimes it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, it shouldn't be made hastily.
Okay, let me get Commissioner Fournier, and then I'll get Commissioner Fournier, and then Commissioner Edwards.
Hi, Mike, I have a question. I'm just, like, process. So some of these are, you know, like, I get a recommendation, you get a recommendation, but it's unclear to me, like, as these apps come in, there's some that maybe I didn't get that would be my recommendation. Is there, and there's no, like, there's no part on the form where it would go to, like, my desk and then I would sign off on that recommendation. Is there thought given to that? Like, I mean, it gets a little antsy for me when I see applications that I haven't, you know, that weren't given to me, but they would be in my district. And I'm like, okay, is the rest of the board approving that tonight, or am I put on the spot to have to give it, you know, a reason why or why not before I'm ready?
No.
I mean, you getting this piece of paper and this packet is kind of like.
That's as good as it's gonna get?
Yeah, and then we don't move forward. Usually,
Okay.
if it's the first time somebody's on there, we'll usually say, oh, let's take a couple weeks, or
Okay.
sometimes we want to call people and
Yeah,
talk to them. I mean,
yeah.
sometimes it takes a month or more. Sometimes there's some committees where we ask for a recommendation from that committee. Not all of them, but a few of them kind of have that historic process, so we
Okay.
respect that. So some of them will hang fire here for a month or two.
Okay.
And other ones, it's like, oh, well, we need someone and we're all good with that one. And if the board's ready to go, we just throw it on the agenda and approve it, but that's on a case-by-case basis. So you don't ever have to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just seeing this now, I have to make a decision.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, if there was a quiet commissioner and maybe they're not knowing that process and they get here and they see somebody's name on there, they might think that the rest of the commission is saying yes. And maybe it's not a good thing to add a signature line for that commissioner, because, you know, when it goes to other recommending, you know, groups, we're giving them explicit authority to recommend or not. Maybe, I don't know. It was something I was thinking about. And then some of these, like, I was looking through them, and some of the blackout lines were covering what they were even applying for. And there was one, oh, yeah. And it's like where it says it's blacked out what the advisory board they're even applying for is. So I don't know if somebody got just happy with the Sharpie or.
Yeah. Elena McCrews, I see that. Yeah, I'm not sure why that was done. But I mean, this is really just I guess to try to answer part of your question, this list doesn't indicate that any commissioner has recommended this or approved it. This is just an inventory of who's submitted an application.
Okay.
You may have somebody in mind who just hasn't put their name in
Okay.
yet, so they're not on the list, or you may have seen this and that's who you want, or that's just somebody that randomly just submitted an application. The clerk of the board's telling us, here's who you've got officially applied for each spot.
Okay.
And then we kind of hash it through in these Tuesday mornings and decide, are we ready to move that one? Nope. Are we ready does somebody want an extra 2 weeks on this one? Fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
Well, I guess I want to follow up on that same application. Everything's blacked out that's pertinent on this one application. Where they live, how to get a hold of them, what group they're interested in being involved with.
We have unredacted copies.
Pardon?
We have unredacted copies for you. This is just, for public, so they don't have that information.
But do we know what this person is wanting to apply for?
They're listed under Planning Commission on the summary sheet.
True.
If you look on your summary sheet, if you match the name.
If we, you know, I understand not putting home address, maybe we put what district they live in. Could that be added to the application?
Yeah, and
Well,
I would like to be able to, I think anybody puts in an application, we have to have some contact information to get a hold of them. And
So-
granted, it's public or not, but
one of the processes that was happening before was that, as applications were coming in for planning commission, we were getting those applications via email to the commissioner where it, you know, if it was someone who had an at-large position, they were getting these applications. If they had an open seat. But then we didn't have a vacancy in the planning commission for so long that it kind of just got lost. But I remember back when I was, because I had an empty seat for a while, and I was just receiving applications for planning commission. They were getting sent to me directly, just saying like, this is a planning commission application, and it had the full information via email. So maybe sending these applications to the full board, the unredacted versions, Katie, that work?
I can print it for you if that's something that you'd like. I can forward as well. That's fine. They're public record regardless.
Yeah.
Is there an effort to protect the person's
Just a little bit more
personal
privacy
info
since
from
this is-
being a public record? Is that?
If they're sending them in via email, it's public record.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
if a public record is requested, I believe.
Okay.
I guess I need clarification on that. So if someone puts in for a position, this is all, it comes in filled out, but we redact some of this information. Is that what I'm hearing?
My understanding is we redact this for the purpose of printing it for the agenda.
And I
Because we
guess-
hang that on our
Try
website,
to-
and it's just
exactly,
one
we
level of.
try to protect people's personal information, but if we get a public records request, then it's up to the attorneys on whether or not it's redacted.
Why would we be wanting to secretly, I mean, it kind of smells of secretly appointing somebody to me. I mean, I want to
Certainly
make,
not secretly appointing anybody.
Well-
The names are right there, and if someone wanted to request a public record, what part of their personal information do you think should be public?
well, if they're going to apply to be on a public board, I just think that we should have everything transparent as much as we possibly can. Maybe an email or something. I mean, where do they live? Do they live here? Do they live in New York?
Well, it's personal emails, because they don't have a county email until they get appointed. And like your
even
personal
then, maybe
email's not posted anywhere on the county website.
I've had a publicly listed phone number and address in the book for over 40 years now.
Yeah.
And I answer the phone myself when we get a call, or my wife does, or it
Rotary
goes to an
phone at
answering
home.
machine. I get a lot of goofy calls at
Yeah.
home, but the public is paying my salary. And I figure I owe that to the public to be 100% available at any given time. And so I do wonder why we get applications and somebody, well, I've got an application in, but I don't want anybody to know how to get a hold of me, talk to me, or whatever. I just don't think, I don't know this person. I have no heartburn at all. I just think the process should always be available so the public knows who's doing and making recommendations or decisions for them. I don't think we should ever have that be squelched. So that's just where I'm at. I've had other opposing opinions to the board in the past, so I mean, I respect anybody else's position as well. So that's just my 2 cents.
And then another nuance is at this point in time, the person is not appointed, right? They're not actually in that position. So this provides a little bit more of a buffer for their privacy. And if they're never appointed, then it's, they can maintain that. Unfortunately, you sometimes have to plan for the worst case scenario of different behaviors in the community.
So, going back to the commissions, the Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees with Dustin Loop, are commissioners okay with moving forward with that this afternoon?
I am. I saw Cheryl's message recommending that, and
Okay.
Commissioner Klaus? Edwards?
I don't,
This doesn't
I
look-
don't see a name.
This is the Grace Harbor appointment.
Oh, no, I'm fine with that.
Commissioner Klaus?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. So we'll move this forward to the consent agenda this afternoon. Okay, and then for the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee, Katie, you said there was a recommendation from the advisory committee on this one?
Requests for treatment sales tax advisory. Give me a second.
And is, I think Shaylin usually,
Yeah,
they would give
Carrie
us a,
would be here,
yeah,
but,
they would give us a rundown on kind of the conversation and why they chose the person, and we would have a conversation on that. So I'll skip into the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. And Jenica is here. Jenica, can you speak a little bit on that one?
Yes, good morning. So we have an application from Alan T. Pogue, who is the owner and operator of Offutt Lake Resort. We are filling the 5th seat of a business that is paying into lodging tax. This is a very small pool of people within Thurston County that fit into this category. And so I'm very appreciative that Mr. Pogue sent in an application. We are going to be starting our lodging tax 2024 review and recommendation cycle, January 22nd and 25th. And so I would recommend that we're able to have a discussion that fits on that timeline.
I guess I'd like to see that position be filled by Mr. Pogue.
I'm all for Tom, AKA Alan.
Commissioner Menser, Commissioner Klaus?
I'm okay with that as well.
Okay. So we'll move forward with Alan Pogue on the consent agenda this afternoon. Okay, then next, before I go to the Planning Commission, there's the Historic Commission. And this is for District 3, but I'm seeing here that there's 2 openings for District 2, and then there's 3 alternates, and this is Ira Kitmatcher? Ira? I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. So if commissioners will look at that application, and
Didn't you say that the committee itself had recommended this person?
did they? Oh, I didn't hear that.
Thought Katie said that.
Good catch.
But do they have to take an alternate seat because they're from District 3? Or is this district specific?
So I'm guessing they would have to take it as an alternate.
If it's district specific, I don't know exactly how that one's structured.
There's 5 openings on the Historic Commission.
There's 12 regular and 2, so there's technically 10 people sitting in the Historic Commission currently.
2 openings and 3 alternates.
And of those alternates, are those assigned alternates or are those just available to anybody?
So that's where the Heritage Grant Program falls into the Historic Commission, right? So that's coming up on our briefings. We might be able to ask some of those questions.
Okay, so then we'll go ahead and maybe circle back on this
Should
application.
we wait then until we hear that?
I guess I
I know
would
people
just
would
for
love to serve on that.
clarification.
All right, let's wait on that one. Just briefly.
They're just recommending, like. Commissioner Klaus, are you okay with waiting?
Yes.
So we'll wait. And then we're still waiting from the Board of Equalization. Okay, Planning Commission, we have 4 applications. I have an at-large opening, and I'm moving to recommend Mr. Daniel Bumbarger to my at-large seat.
That's okay with me.
What's his name? Daniel Bumbarger, number 3 on the list.
Are commissioners okay if we add this to the consent agenda this afternoon? Okay. So Commissioner Klaus, Commissioner Fournier, you have 3 applicants if you would like to go through, or if you have someone else that you would like to recruit, then have time. Okay.
Thank you.
Then the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee, did we hear back from Shaylin? No? Okay, so then I guess we'll be waiting on that. And for Commissioner Klaus and Commissioner Fournier, usually we get a recommendation from the committee. They go through an interview process, I believe, and they have a lot of discussion just from what the process has been in the past, and they'll come back and give us a recommendation, and we'll have that discussion on why they went a certain direction or not, what opening, what hole is the committee trying to fill. Usually they go, you know, if they have an opening with someone maybe that needs a behavioral health expertise, and they'll kind of direct it at that. But
I thought when you opened up, Katie, I thought you said Historic Commission and TST were supported by the committees. Is that not right?
Historic Commission is recommending appointment as requested. Lower it says, LTAC and TST are recommending appointments as requested.
who is TST recommending?
There was 3
All 3, they have 3.
So there are 3 applicants, so they're recommending the 3 of them? Is that Shaylin?
Shaylin's just
Oh, perfect, yeah.
pretty commuted in there.
So there's 3 openings in there. They're recommending all 3?
Yeah,
Is that
looks
what's
like
going
it.
on?
Thought that's what I heard.
And what about the Historic Commission? Am I hearing that?
1 applicant,
But did they
5
recommend this
openings.
applicant?
They did, but we don't know for what seat, if they're recommending it for their District 3 and there's 2 District 2 openings. Or so if they were recommending them for an at-large, we just don't know exactly what they're recommending them for. Shaylin?
I just saw that piece of paper.
Yes, hi.
Hi, we're on the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee, so could you give us a little bit of a rundown of what the TST is recommending on this, and take it
Yeah,
from there?
I'd be happy to. So we have currently 3 vacancies on the advisory committee right now, so 6 total, and you should have in your packet a little overview of the current members and then also the applications that we've received. We have Garrett Cady, who applied, and he currently works as the Thurston County Clerk's Judicial Information Specialist. He has lived experience navigating justice and behavioral health systems. He's also a graduate of the Washington State Healthcare Authority Certified Peer Counseling Program, and we've been really wanting to have some experience from peers on the board and lived experience, so we thought that was great. And the advisory committee recommended we appoint his application. And then we also received an application for Jennifer Creighton. And Jennifer is a former Thurston County District Court Administrator
and manager of the therapeutic court and analyst, for the administrative office of the courts. They also have experience in policy work and program implementation involving alternatives to incarceration, and the board has really benefited from having a lot of extensive experience and knowledge of the courts, and so the advisory committee recommended they be appointed as well. And then we have one more application I need to pull up really quick.
Diana Cockrell.
Yes, I was looking at an outdated document. Diana Cockrell. Apologize. Let's see. My computer is being slow. Yes, and Diana Cockrell, I'll also just say, she was also recommended for appointment. So she has a background in addictions counseling and a lot of work with youth and families. And so the committee has also saw a need for more of that experience and knowledge on the committee. So all of them took in a unanimous vote to recommend all three of the new applicants to be part of the committee.
Perfect. Thank you, Shaylin. Go ahead, Commissioner Fournier.
You'd mentioned, Shaylin, that one of the applicants is a current county employee. Is that common practice for boards and commissions to appoint county employees?
I don't think I haven't heard if it's a common practice, but for this one, it shouldn't be a conflict of interest since the clerk's, Garrett works for the clerk's office and they don't receive any TSC funding.
Is there any comment from the county manager?
Yes, it is not a common practice for county employees to be appointed to advisory boards. However, there's no prohibition against doing so.
Okay.
I mean, I would like, if there's multiple applicants for one seat, I usually will go away from that because we're trying to broaden participation throughout the community. But given that there's 3 open seats and 3 qualified applicants here.
But we don't know how many applicants there were because they were reviewed by the TS. There could have been 30 applications for all we know, right?
Could have been, but we would have probably seen that in our weekly summary here. I mean, I don't remember seeing 30 names there.
Shaylin, how many people did apply?
3 total.
Yeah, there you go.
I was like, 3 applications.
We do get, we don't just get handed 3 people, like, and not knowing out of a black box. We usually would have seen the number of applicants on the summary sheet.
Okay. I think as long as there's thought given to how that person is employed and how that interaction would occur, and it sounds like that matrix has been done.
Right, and it sounds like there is no conflict. Is Mr. Katie the gentleman who had applied for the Board of Health?
And we encouraged him to, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we did.
We encouraged him to find another place to plug in more appropriately.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move forward with our commissioner is okay with moving forward with the recommendation from the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Commission. Commissioner Klaus?
I'm okay with that. I also want to say I'm really excited that Mr. Katie applied to this committee. I think that's really cool. I liked his application for Board of Health, so I'm definitely okay with moving forward with that recommendation.
Okay, so we'll be moving forward with the recommendation to the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee for Garrett Katie, Diana Cockrell, and Jennifer Katie. Okay.
Thank you.
6 people we're adding to the consent agenda today.
Yeah.
Just
So
keeping track. Making sure we got that straight.
So I'll go through it one more time. Okay, so for the Board of Equalization, we are going to be waiting on that until we receive a recommendation from them. Historic Commission, we are waiting on that even though there is a recommendation, just until we meet with them, just to see where they would prefer that appointment to be, whether it's by district or is it an alternate. For the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, we are moving forward with Alan Pogue, and that will be added to the consent agenda. With Planning Commission, we are moving forward with Daniel Bumbarger for District 1 at large. And then for Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees, we're moving forward with Dustin Lube, and this is a Grace Harbor representative appointment, and this will be added to the consent agenda as well. And we are moving forward with the 3 recommendations for the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee in the consent agenda today. Perfect. Okay. Any questions on advisory boards and commissions? Okay. PIO check-in.
My only update is that I'm working through the hiring process for the 2 public information specialists. I have interviews set up this Friday for 4 applicants for the media production specialist, and I'm hoping to set up interviews for the internal comms person for next Friday. That position doesn't close until Monday though, so I won't have all those applications, but hoping we can get those scheduled. So hopefully next week I'll have some good news about getting one of the positions filled at least.
How many applications have you received for those?
For the media production one, we received 28.
Wow.
And so far for the internal one, it's 18 or 19, somewhere around there. Yeah,
Excellent.
So it's a good pool.
Good, cool.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Moving on to legislative check-in, and then after this, we will be taking a break. So Assistant County Manager Gilder, you are holding us from our break, so go ahead.
Well, the pressure is on. As commissioners, I'm sure can imagine, the packet, the information that was part of our packet, you can pretty much throw that out because so much has happened. They opened the legislative session yesterday, and it's been fast and furious. It's amazing, just with a short session. There are a lot of moving parts. Everything that was dead last year can be resurrected this year, good, bad, or indifferent. But thus far, it's reported we've actually had a sort of a record number of pre-filed bills for this short session that started coming in December and continued right up to the time that the session opened. So I'll make several comments, but I don't know if this document really is what we'll be following right now, just because it needs to be edited and up to speed. But first and foremost, want to thank Deborah McGee. She has been phenomenal and is just on top of it. Great individual that the county is well served by having. It's been a pleasure to work with her, and thanks to Katie as well for constantly trying to stay on top of this document, because at this point in time, until we start getting dates where cutoffs are occurring, it's going to be a moving target constantly. One of the bills that will be resurrected for this year is 5770, which is the property tax cap. You'll see that down under one of our top priorities as under local animal services, and it's really not there. It's supposed to be up in the first section, so apologies about that. But that is looking at the potential increase in property tax from 1% to 3%, which would be a combination of inflation and population growth. The board, if you recall, recently signed on to a coalition, and we've lended our logo and our support to having that move forward. One request I might have of the board, when I get the call from Deborah, she will be looking for potential individuals or commissioners that might be willing to go and testify when that hearing gets scheduled. So if one of you in particular would like to be on call for that, would appreciate knowing that, so we can try to get that coordinated as best as possible. Another bill that is down further in the list when it comes to law and justice is 5773, and that is specifically around public defense funding. You know that for the past several years that the Washington State Association of Counties has been working on trying to advocate for greater funding for public defense. This particular bill does work on increasing that reimbursement to local jurisdictions or to counties over the course of several years, but it caps out at 50% in 2028. But this is also kind of running concurrently with active litigation that the state association has with the state, so there's more to come on that. But just wanted to let you know that we'd be signing in support of that bill. And then Deborah has done some great, if you look down to our second or a third priority in terms of flexibility for the county health department, we have a House bill and a companion bill in the Senate, which looks at modifying the local board of health for county commissioner membership, which this is a bill that only affects Thurston County. As you know, when we had to expand the board and then our board of commissioners expanded, we, per state law and the way it's written, had to include all 5 commissioners on this. This would give us flexibility for the board of county commissioners to pass an ordinance amending the number of commissioners that would serve on the board of health.
I'm sure there will be some counties that object to it. Sorry, so.
There may be.
Petty.
You never
Still
know.
petty after last year.
But basically, is a non-charter county with a health department, that's a very narrow scope of the number of.
Is that like 2? What is that?
That's basically 1.
Which one is it?
It's Thurston.
Oh, no,
So
okay.
this is
Well, I'm just
legislation
trying to
that
think
would
who's
only
gonna-
affect us.
Oh,
Just for sport?
it was counties that last year, what was it, Robin? It was the updating codes for counties that had to do with 5 commissioners, and we had counties that were not even close to the 300,000 mark objecting to it. And
Matter
it
of fact,
was,
one of the smallest.
it was one of the smallest counties, and so.
From the legislative side, a lot of background work has been happening from our own delegation with legislators that have been very involved in the whole expansion process to make sure that they had a level of comfort with this legislation. So we've been running those trap lines, and that looks really good. So we'll continue to move forward in that.
So you'll have to pay attention for that at LSC and make sure that LASAC supports it. That way it's not.
Okay. And we'll get support from WASALFO as well. And having conversations with it. So WASALFO is the Washington State Association of Local Public Health Officials. Okay. So there's any number of acronyms. That, some of them don't come off the tongue so easily as others.
This
SALFO is fun to say.
Right. This item is also on the shared legislative agenda of Thurston County partners. So it's moving in a lot of different ways.
There is no specific bills related to our priority for carbon dense forests at this point in time. There is some conversation happening about a potential bill related to animal services, but there's nothing that has been introduced at this point in time. I did step out on a call earlier with Deborah. It appears that Representative Barkas would like to probably convene a meeting probably sometime on Friday, details to be determined, to talk about the transportation funding and related to the 507 Vale Road roundabout and sort of where that's at. They're not funding any new projects. This is not a new project, but it's not fully funded either. So that will be one of the things that we'll see if there's a path forward in this short session to make that happen. In terms of the shared priorities, nothing yet in terms of the housing or any flexibility for parks M&O. There are many pieces of legislation coming forward relative to the least restrictive alternatives and ones that have been in the interim worked on by Representative Griffey, Dolio's, many partners locally have been carrying the water on this. And so all of the legislation, while there's maybe some redundancy, it's all working in concert and not in opposition. So I would recommend that the board support each one of these pieces of legislation related to the LRAs.
I personally need a little more information on 1926. I'm supportive of the other two, but this one, you know, I pulled the actual bill and it's just references to all these other statutes. It's hard for me to understand how this changes the supervision.
Where's
like,
1926?
framework. So I may just, I mean, really need to check in with maybe Patrick O'Connor from Public Defense to know if the defense bar has concerns about this.
Okay. And it basically is adding one more compliance for an offender, one more requirement related to that compliance credit. And so the only addition is having that the subject is, so in that RCW, the one change is on that second page, is related to an offender is not eligible to earn supervision compliance credit if he or she, and then they have the standing items, it only adds, is also subject to supervision pursuant to the additional RCW site, but we can follow up on
As
that.
it was described to me, it's like you don't get, like, so Washington puts people on an island and then wants to say that they can't get supervision credit because they're on that island that the state put them on.
Hmm.
And then they bring them off an island and then they have to start supervision. I don't know that that's fair or constitutional. I need to hear more about that.
Yep, we will
It
do.
might work, but it raised some concerns just on the
supervision credit while on the island.
I think the idea is to make sure that, because there's this gap, right? Like you're on an island. Now you go into the community.
They've got to be constantly moving towards least restrictive confinement.
Yeah, and so the
Or
question.
being able to process and show that they can be.
The
right?
question is, when they get into the community, have they used up all their supervision because they
Oh.
were kept on an island? So they want to not give them credit for supervision on the island so that when they come into the community, there's a period of supervision. I understand the intent, but if you think about it, it's like, well, what are the rules about holding someone, you know, like, just because I hold you on an island and I don't know what the rules are about that, then that means that I don't get any supervision credit.
People that are on that island aren't like subject to the same, like rules of confinement, or like they're not there on sentences necessarily.
Right, which
They're
means-
there based on treatment needs. So like
Right,
the
so-
confinement rules, when I understood, like it wasn't the same as somebody that was going through DOC and had like, you know, they've got to be on supervision for 4 years. It was, they've got to be on supervision until they can prove that they're safe.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly an answer to this. I just need to make sure that this is the right answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about it. I just want to talk with the, you know, some of the stakeholders we have in the system to see if this is a good, well thought out fix. I understand the desire to want to make sure there's, when the release to the community comes, that there's a supervision framework there.
I don't know if the McNeil Island supervisor will still answer my phone calls.
Yeah.
But I've got his number if you want it.
Wasn't there like, well, this is a question for Leah, but isn't there like a, wasn't there like a long-term goal of getting rid of that facility altogether? Shutting it down?
There's factions that want that and don't want that.
Right, I think that ultimately the department is looking to do a certain amount of regionalization, so that you have your proportionate share, right? They're trying to really do that and spread that around the state based on not necessarily the county in which an individual was convicted, but knowing that some of these services are going to be better provided by a facility that is community-based but serves a region. And so it's just part of the overall kind of continuum of services provided to that population.
So they're doing that with this, chemical dependency, mental health, like
And
that
so it
facility they
will-
opened up in Rochester. It was kind of the same concept, was a chemical dependency in the county or regional kind of thing.
Right, and
Seems
there's
like.
different funding for those, but I think conceptually the same thing, trying to get the beds or the capacity within, closer to the community where we're trying to serve. The least restrictive alternatives, it's just, this would be that regionalization would be one piece of it. And then depending on where they are in their supervision and if they're eligible and the court orders it, they can then transition to more community-based, which would be the houses or homes that are being provided services, which is the subject of a couple of other pieces of legislation that our delegation has worked on, and that's 2096 and 2093. And those are really about ensuring appropriate notice to the communities, as we've all noticed or experienced directly. There's been this whole contracting of services where there's been inadequate, if any, notice to the local jurisdictions. And so this helps to provide some framework and bookends around that. There is one that's not yet on the sheet that just came up is 2178. And this also gets to the custodial pathways in sort of the timeline based on the conviction that's received. And that is kind of, we'll get more information and provide it to you directly forward. But I know I am keeping you. Don't want to get the hook, but I know between you and
I have two more questions or subjects. Under regional meat processing capital request, we have nothing to track and nothing. So like, I mean, are we looking to make a capital request?
So, yep, that was my next comment. So we have been partnering, and Jenica's not on here, but with the EDC, the Aslan was going to be submitting a capital request on behalf of the region. We also have just heard that in terms of capital requests, there is not going to be much entertained during the short session, probably a maximum of maybe around 120,000, which may or may not be worthwhile when it comes to our next steps related to the regional meat processing.
It's always good to just put that in there.
Oh, definitely.
Because then the next year comes along, you didn't give us money and.
How about for a regional feasibility study? Like maybe if there's not gonna be a lot of capital funds available, but maybe building up on the study that we did with Pierce County and to looking into more of the nitty-gritty of it, because a lot of these USDA grants are requiring a feasibility study, and the one we did with Pierce County isn't checking all the boxes. So maybe something that we can request is, funding for a study that checks all the boxes that's going to be done, not just on a Thurston Pierce level, but a whole Western region level. And maybe that would be more appealing.
We can ask for that. It would not be more appealing to the state legislature.
I would
a
still
small amount like that.
Advocate for 120, 150, knowing the project, where it's at, where all the other money is, and what would be needed for that site. With $150,000, you're putting in, adding to the water infrastructure that was already there, that the state has already funded with a previous grant. Maybe you're putting in just 2 pads of asphalt, and that is a make or break for that project in that small portion of it. So, I wouldn't shy away from even $100,000.
Yeah. We're trying to follow up with Aslan to actually see what has been crafted.
Okay.
And were submitted, but
And then my other one was, I appreciate seeing House Bill 1977 on here. The designated Tenino sandstone as a state rock.
Of course.
It's not the biggest county priority, but it is a big deal for a lot of people. And just of note, I thought it was interesting, I got a message last night that Wilkeson has filed a rival bill.
Oh.
They want the designation for Wilkeson sandstone. So this is like a 150-year-old rivalry. I don't want things to get ugly, but I'm sending people to Wilkeson from the guild to try and make things cool. And but I would love to see the county and the city of Tenino draft something jointly that could go on in support of that effort, if that's something we want to.
Sure.
Commissioner? So Wilkinson, you said, the town of?
Yes, the town of Wilkeson.
But was the sandstone?
They got their own sandstone.
Right, but
Wilkeson sandstone,
Inferior
it
sandstone.
is inferior.
Our
I shouldn't say that.
Our sandstone though, was used to build our state capitol, wasn't it?
Portions.
Portions of it.
There's a wing
Yeah.
that, there's another portion that was used, that Wilkeson sandstone
Oh,
was
they
used.
did, okay, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
and then for like, and there's been ebbs and flows in each of the communities as far as what they provide. And, you know, like Wilkeson, when Marinakis was in full swing, they would use a lot of Wilkeson, and they bought out a Tenino quarry, shut it down and wouldn't pull any Tenino sandstone. But then Marinakis was sold, and one of the owners bought the Tenino quarry, and now we're quarrying stone there, and Wilkeson doesn't have any, so we're like poised to get things going in the second oldest profession, and we just needed that bump.
What county is Wilkeson in?
Pierce.
So commissioners, in the interest of time, a couple of things.
I'm not gonna say anything else about stuff.
No, that's all right. I just want to say in terms of process, we're going to, I think, flesh out some of the details piece so that there's a better description. As you know, with any bill, titles are not necessarily really helpful to understand what's going on in the bill. So, but what you see in the remaining pages are based on different categories of elections, housing, general government, law and justice. We're trying to then categorize those bills so that it just makes an easier, quicker reference.
I appreciate this.
So we'll flesh that out, but in process, historical, not wanting to, is your preference that I come with a recommendation and a position of these on each one of these bills for the board to consider? Some of them are specifically when it comes to general government. The concern obviously is when there's potential impacts to our revenue sources, impacts to, general liability. That could any be those cost drivers to the county organization. We just want to address those. So preferences?
What we've got on our priorities would be obviously first preference, I guess. And then at your discretion, I guess, if it's something that might impact anything like that, a liability issue, cost issue, whatever, even though it's not on our list, we probably want to know about it.
And I imagine we'll keep in touch with Commissioner Fournier as our LSC rep, because there may be bills that the association will be specifically focused on that we can incorporate in here for better tracking as well.
Is this hung somewhere electronically with these links?
So these all have links, yes, in the packet, the electronic packet that is available online those are hyperlinks are active.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks to Katie, because that's a skill set that I don't necessarily bring to the table. And the last bill that I would just call your attention to is also a new one, and that is 2137. And that looks at creating flexibility related to tourism promotion areas, the TPAs and the definitions there. And that is to allow for the local legislative authorities to basically exempt certain types of accommodations from that source, which will help us better align our local ordinance with that.
I was like, is this aligned to kind of the issue that's ongoing right now with our TPA?
This would solve the problem.
Okay.
Are you saying that all the ones that you've got here populated into the thing, you're gonna suggest a position that we take, or are these just a broader pool of?
Broader pool of, so maybe not.
Maybe
There will
interest,
be,
okay.
I would say, so there will be bills within that subset that will become priorities that in the next days or weeks we'll know sort of which ones have energy.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer to just be more restrained in what we actually, otherwise we get bogged down. And so, I mean, like, I would prefer to just stay neutral unless there's a real obvious impact, on the county.
Sure.
So it's good to have the information, but, otherwise it just bogs down. Now with five of us, it's gonna bog down more because it's just, like you say, like the title doesn't tell you anything, and these bills are complex, and sometimes there's competing bills, and you know, I have to go out and start doing research projects on bills that may never go anywhere just so I can take a vote and not, you know, it just, it doesn't seem to be the greatest use of commissioner time. If it's not a bill that really doesn't impact us.
We'll
you know,
continue to
strongly.
refine it.
Start advocating for that.
So this is one area,
No.
legislation is one
Sign and
area
support.
where a subcommittee might make sense. Rob and I have talked about when we go to the new calendar in February, we're instead of having this on the Tuesday agenda setting, because it does consume a lot of time, we're gonna have a standing meeting on Wednesday mornings that's specifically about legislation. And depending on how fast things are moving, we may need to add one on Monday too. But, you know, and that way commissioners can come if you're interested, or.
I think that's a really good idea, specifically for the person sitting on LSC. Sitting on LSC and not having, and I know you've sat on LSC before as well, Commissioner Menser, and having this on a Tuesday meeting and then trying to go through some positions that the county's on and kind of checking that with the WASAC one, it was just, at times it was a lot. And so just having that standing meeting where we actually have time to discuss with the board a position is sometimes very helpful, so.
Since you mentioned subcommittee, is the concept of having any other subcommittees, is that on our planning session, or are we?
That is part of the planning session where we're going to review an updated version of the board operating guidelines that I will have for you tomorrow morning.
Because we heard again from, in the assessor's presentation,
Clearly.
and so I want to make sure that we address that, however it's going to land.
Okay.
But we will refine and hone this so that it is informative, but not too much.
Okay, perfect. Well, it is 11:23. Let's take a break. We'll take a break for around 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll come back. Okay, we are back from break. It is 11:40 and we left off with briefing and public hearing decisions pending. The first one is the Heritage Grant Program Awards, and this is a follow-up from our work session on December 13th, 2023. And so hopefully you have your notes, commissioners, because I know it's been a while since.
What date was that?
December 13th, 2023.
And we also deferred a question about committee membership. And just for clarification, Jeremy, if you could.
Right, so we are at this time looking for direction on how you would like to proceed. And I'm gonna just turn it straight over to Jeremy.
Do you want to handle the decision on the briefing first and then the membership question after, or the membership question first?
Let's do the briefing decision first.
Okay. So just a short summary, back on December 13th, we came to you to give you the Historic Commission's recommendation on the 2024 Heritage Program Grant Awards. At the briefing, we gave you a brief summary of 6 different grant requests, including their recommendation for funding for them. The original funding in the Heritage Grant announcement was for $5,000 for each grant. We did have a little snafu and had 7,500 posted for a hot moment. So we did actually receive 1 grant application with a request for $7,500. The Historic Commission, just a broad summary, said to fund them all at a much higher level. The board discussion at the time, if I remember correctly, was to not fund them at that higher level, but fund them at the original amount of $5,000 each. And so the 6 grant requests one came from the City of Olympia, one was Gate Community Club, one is Olympia Historical Society, Olympia Tumwater Foundation, City of Tenino, and Window Seat Media. And I'd be happy to go into a short summary of each one if you wanted me to refresh your memory on those. It's your decision on that. I didn't want to give a complete briefing again this morning, of course.
Questions, comments? Ready to move forward?
I was for taking the recommendations of the Historic Commission and funding at the higher level since the money was available. Did we finally make that decision, or is that something that we're still talking about?
That's this morning, sir.
Okay.
And so one of the alternatives for funding at the lower level would, of course, to have an expanded program for 2025. So if the board funds it at the lower level, we would then work with the budget office to determine what the funding is going to be in 2025. And then we would have a bigger amount to award next year after we reassess the fund in its current state.
But if I remember correctly, you were saying there's enough money to do that expanded program.
There's a substantial
Anyways.
amount of money in this.
Yeah, so even if we fund at the higher level, next year we still could do an expanded funding level, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Was this the one where it was just about like, well, giving extra money and we weren't exactly sure what?
Yes, sir.
They need it, what's the scope? Okay, I do remember this conversation.
Okay, so Commissioner Fornier has set a recommendation forward to approve as was recommended. Is there a different direction the board wants to head in? Or is the board okay with moving forward with that recommendation? Okay, thumbs up from Commissioner Klaus. Commissioner Edwards said he's good. Thumbs up from me as well.
Okay, so would this be the higher level recommended by the Historic Commission or
Yeah.
by staff, so we stay within the budget limit that was set in the annual budget?
Yes.
There was the lower limit of $6,500.
There was the higher limit, the recommendation that was made by the Historic Commission.
Okay, higher limit then.
So when do we start discussing what expanded options would look like for the next round?
We'll work with the budget office to determine where the fund balance is going to be at next year, and we'll come and brief you on that later this year to give you the funding options.
Okay.
When do the grants usually open up?
So we usually open up the Heritage Program grants for people to submit in July of every year. So we do have some time to work with the budget office to do that and then still come back to you.
I have some crazy ideas. Love to talk to you about, or whoever's
We
appropriate.
have assumed 40,000 a year for this program each year into the future. And that is spending down the fund at about about 25,000 a year. We're anticipating that at the end of 2024, we'll have just over 100,000 in this fund. You've just funded this program with an extra $3,000. The fund can easily absorb it, but then at the end of 25, we're looking around 81,000, 23 or 26, 54,000. We are spending at a rate intended to step the fund balance down. So.
My idea is not that crazy.
Okay. I'm just saying, we already are using all of the revenue that's coming in.
And Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the funding is also dependent on the number of documents that are recorded because it's dependent on a $1 document recording fee. So as home sales have gone down, the document recording fees go down, and that's the funding source. So that's, I think, why we've also seen a decrease in that funding. If we do start seeing increased home sales in Thurston County and or documents recorded, then we'll start seeing more funding in it.
Okay.
So, and that was also part of the reason why we had a lot of funding, because we had a lot of home sales from 2020 to 2023 or so.
So this becomes part of your budget conversation.
Okay. And then we had questions regarding the boards and the board matrix or something like that. There's 5 vacancies.
And so there was a recommendation from the board, from the Historic Commission, and but didn't quite specifically say in which seat. There is 2 District 2 seats open, and then there's 3 alternates. And this appointment would be for a District 3. So not sure if we're still appointing by districts in that commission, or is it just, are they just open seats? Was this one of the ones that was going to be updated since?
Yes, Madam Chair, we are working on an update to the code right now. Currently, the code says that each board member will nominate 4 members for a total of 12 members. We'll be working on that to make it consistent with the Planning Commission, and the Historic Commission is also going to come to the board with some possible updates to it, because some of the items are very out of date in their particular code. Work items, not the membership, I should say. That's what the Historic Commission has been working on. But we are going to come to you probably by the end of this month or so with some reapportionment updates to it. I will say that it's currently written. Each Historic Commission member is nominated by a board member, but there's no in-district requirement. They don't have to live in the district. So if someone lives in District 3, the person can still be nominated by a District 2 county commissioner for appointment onto the Historic Commission.
You're going to keep that structure?
Um,
where commissioners nominate, because the Planning Commission is the only one I think that has that, and that makes sense because it's a very hot topic committee, but Historic Commission is not a political committee really, and it just seems like that's creating an unnecessary.
As we've been currently looking at it, we would keep them all at large. It can be particularly difficult to recruit members for the Historic Commission, so we would want to have the bar as low as possible as far as membership goes to cover the technical requirements of us being a certified local government, as well as where folks live with the technical folks that we need, because we need architects, we need someone who has some knowledge of the law around historic structures, we need some other technical professions that are in the code, so. But yeah, we want to make it as easy as possible. If we tried to make it in district, it would raise the bar quite a bit.
I'm saying about having the commissioner be the nominator. Does that need to be kept intact?
We can absolutely change that, and yeah, we don't have to have that in there, sir.
I don't see why that would be.
I don't either. I think whoever wants to apply to the Historic Commission, they obviously have a passion for it, and so seeing that we do have an appointment for a District 3 as the District 2 Commissioner, recommending that we appoint
Ira.
It's you.
Yeah. You're the guy with the 2 vacancies under the current code.
So.
Am I missing something here?
So
maybe.
I think I'm missing something.
So basically what Jeremy says is that since there's 2 District 2 vacancies, that
the District
But I
2
could
commissioner,
appoint somebody
yeah, nominate,
You're not
Ira.
stuck with somebody from District 2. It's just that you're the person that has
So
to
am
nominate
I
them.
hearing a recommendation that that would be a good appointment?
The committee said yes, so, and I'm
Committee
good with
said
it.
yes,
Well, yeah, I'm good with it.
Pretty rock solid application.
Yeah,
I'm
it looked
good.
good.
Okay, I just thought
Written books
something
and-
was happening. No, I thought the way that was
Had me
presented.
history and haunted tours.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
So-
Yeah.
Let's get her
Can we
done.
walk them on today?
Yes.
And is Katie,
I'll let them know.
yeah, please let her know right now.
So Ira Kit Matcher will be appointed into the consent agenda. Is that okay with you, Commissioner Klaus? Into the consent agenda for that District 2 seat opening nominated by the district.
Because let's just think for a minute on how confusing that actually is. We're told District 2 opening, but that means a District 2 commissioner nominating opening. And then we're told this guy lives in District 3, which is actually irrelevant information since the commissioner nominating can pick from any district. So that's just get rid of
Oh, I'm good with that. I wholeheartedly agree. I heard the conversation, so.
Yeah, it's just so confusing.
so,
More about skill set than.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay. UGA Subcommittee, Grand Mound.
I think the intent was for me to give a brief report on what happened at the UGM subcommittee meeting and then pass it to CPED to talk about what the next steps in the wake of that could be, based on the substance of what was decided and the cost of what's in front of us and all those factors. So what happened was, if you remember, we have 4 external Grand Mound projects hanging fire. 3 of them involved a UGA expansion request. 1 did not. So the one that did not, which is Jackson, that was not considered at the meeting. The other 3 were considered at the meeting. If you remember, this was paused from last summer because we needed the additional data of the industrial land study and the housing data, and some other information that was requested by the UGM subcommittee in order to fully make a well-informed decision. So when they considered all that information, basically 2 of the projects were unanimously given a thumbs up, and that's the Wilmowski and the Black Lake Quarry. And then the Deskins proposal was not recommended, again unanimously, because it really just didn't meet the criteria. There wasn't any support in the data that we had to move that one forward. So that was the recommendation. Now it comes to the Board of County Commissioners, and I'm just going to kind of pass it to Ashley or Josh to explain what the board can do now. I personally have an interest in seeing all of these projects reach final resolution this year, but each one now has a slightly different positioning, and so I'm going to pass it to CPED staff to talk about next steps.
Since Josh turned on his.
Go for it, Ashley.
Okay.
She's trying to pass it to you, you're trying to pass it to her.
Yeah, so there, as Commissioner Menzer said, there are 4 proposals that are still out there for the Grand Mound. So 2 of them we now have a UGM subcommittee recommendation on to move forward. They do happen to both be located on the west side of Grand Mound, relatively close together. So when you think about impacts, and this is all under the context of environmental review, because that's really the next step. So UGM subcommittee makes a recommendation, do environmental review, and then it comes to the board for a hearing and a final decision. So as we think about that environmental review, this is the piece that did not receive funding coming out of last year's budget because of the budget constraints. Environmental review, if you're just looking at 2 pieces of property that are relatively close together, those impacts are going to be less. Those properties don't have the same kind of critical area concerns that the other proposals on the east side of Grand Mound have. So an option before you right now is whether, we already split off Grand Mound into this branching in 2023 to see what can we get done in 2023. You really have an option at this point to branch it further for 2024. So with the 2 proposals that have the UGM subcommittee recommendation, there's an opportunity to be able to complete those in 2024 with a scaled back environmental review that doesn't require a professional services contract. And then still keep the other 2 for consideration on a longer time frame when there might be additional funds for that environmental review. But it would be in the 2025 time frame.
Can I
And
ask?
so, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Josh. I just have a question more towards process more than anything, so go ahead.
Well, that's what I was saying. So if you wanted to ask your question, that might be helpful.
Well, I was gonna ask a specific matter, that was not recommended by the UGA subcommittee. So go ahead and
Okay. So this is, we're all we don't do this very often in terms of a UGA expansion. And so just bear with us as we work through this process. We appreciate the work of TRPC, Allison Osterberg, standing up the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee of the TRPC members. And for those that aren't familiar, this is a subcommittee made up of the elected officials that serve on the TRPC group. So our representative is Commissioner Mincer, and each one of the cities has a representative as well as others. And so we appreciate the recommendation that that subcommittee provided to move forward on the Wilmofsky and the Black Lake Quarry UGA expansions. And for the reasons that Ashley states, staff believes that the next step for an environmental review on those properties that are on the west side of I-5 could be much reduced than what we had stated in the past, that it would not take as much of a heavy lift to do those two reviews. So what we're looking for from the Board of County Commissioners is an acceptance of the UGM subcommittee's recommendations of those two properties to have environmental review for a potential expansion of the urban growth area, and for us to proceed with that, what we believe is the appropriate environmental review of those two properties. So kind of here with Commissioner Mincer as our UGM representative, setting the groundwork, and then asking as staff for direction from the board to move forward on these two citizen-initiated requests.
Can I ask real quick, if Josh, is that, would moving forward on the two west side projects, as you've called it, would that require additional budget allocation by the board, or could that move forward with the 50, well, whatever budget you've got so far?
I believe Ashley has relayed that we do not need extra budget authority. We have what we need to move forward without more funds. Is that correct, Ashley?
Yeah, at this time, we would not need additional budget to get those pieces done.
And just to clarify, we would work with the applicants to ensure that, we're coordinated in the strategies of the information that's needed to proceed. So we're doing this in partnership.
Well, I don't want to cut you off, but I've got some issues I didn't know. You want me to ask them now?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got a recommendation to move forward with the west side without question. And my concern is that any reason given, I know it was mentioned that there was some environmental issues concerned, I guess, on the east side of things, but those other elected officials in other jurisdictions, are they trying to protect their situation as it exists today? Is that what's going on here? They don't want to see an expansion in Grand Mound because they would rather have it kind of be in their bailiwick instead? Is that is that kind of what's happening here?
Can I just say that I want to make it clear that the environmental stuff that Ashley is really separate from the criteria that was applied by the UGM subcommittee.
Thank you.
UGM subcommittee has to go through the Law of Growth Management Act and the countywide planning policies and show that X, Y, and Z have been met. Separate from that is the question of even if UGM had said okay to Deskins, then we'd have the separate issue of, well, there are greater environmental concerns on the east side projects, and we'd have to start talking about money at that point to move them forward. But they're really two separate things going on, and nothing about that environmental complication that you heard from staff even came up at the UGM subcommittee. It was simply applying the legal criteria and showing that there's not enough a particular type of zoning within the current UGA for what was being requested, or a public benefit being created and there's some examples given in the law. So it was really just a different analysis.
Monetary, but it's also timeline. similar to how we approached the Grand Mount question last year, that we were able to proceed and deliver on some of the site-specific requests faster by pulling them apart, looking at the internal ones versus the external ones. We're in kind of the same boat. We have a path to actually deliver on 2 of these site-specific requests much more quickly without a financial impact. If we keep them all together, then we do pull it all into a much larger process that's going to take longer, and that we would need to find the budget to do it.
Okay, then I guess taking all that into consideration, because we have limited tax dollars, to expend on these type of things. I've long been an advocate that pay-to-play type of a thing, I guess. So the applicants should not expect that the county taxpayers would pay for this activity review, permitting, whatever you want to call it. But I think that we ought to move forward on that UGA expansion, because ultimately Grand Mound, it'll incorporate someday, and we might as well get with it. And in the meantime, we can have retail revenue coming in. We are sorely lacking. I think you've all heard me talk about Pierce County, where if you come out Parkland, Spanaway, on out to Mountain Highway, that is all retail outlet that the Pierce County gets to utilize in their operation of general government. We have very little of that. And because of that, I want to go ahead and expand the UGA down there so that we can get business moving. Let's get her done, so to speak, because it's coming anyway. Let's not wait until just before there's a move to create a municipality. Let's get it done now in hopes that we can get revenue in the meantime coming in, because it's coming anyway. And so as far as any of those other players objecting to it, I understand, I don't know, maybe I don't understand their reasons completely, but I respect their reasons. I just don't agree with it. So I think that we need to expand this UGA and get it moving, because it's going to happen and it's coming. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'd like to develop a pay for play or some process so it doesn't encumber our general fund, and that those standing to gain might be the ones that pay the way, or at least partially. Oftentimes there are limited improvement districts created. The state allows that to take place so that different things can be funded for economic development. And I see this as a big economic development issue. So that's
Thank you, Commissioner.
my 2 cents for now.
I think you heard direction there, Chair, Commissioners.
Yeah, there's a recommendation that we move forward with all 4 of the applications rather than the 2 that were recommended, is what I heard Commissioner Edwards say.
That's what I'm in favor of.
Before we jump into that recommendation, can I ask, do you have a question separate from that recommendation, or?
I was going to comment on that recommendation.
Can I, because one of the recommendations, which was the Deskins one, was, I know they were in touch with staff last year because they were asking if they could remove their application for the UGA expansion and just go for a rezone from RRI to RRC. And, they were asking, if the county would work and with them on that, since looking at the process, they didn't think it was going to go very well. So they were just asking, is it a possibility, instead of doing a UGA expansion, to move forward with that? And then, I'm just wondering where that conversation landed with
that property owner and staff, and maybe.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. First, there's only 3 that are requesting for the UGA to be expanded. The other one is just a simple rezone. And then the Deskins is that third that did not meet the criteria under RCW. And staff has been in contact with all 4 of the applicants, and we would commit again to reaching out to see what the Deskins applicant and the Jackson applicant would like to do if the board decides to not move forward with that part of the UGA expansion. In terms of the rezone, I think one of the conversations that staff had back then when the applicant provided that option was that the timing would be as such that let's get this process complete and then shift, if need be, into the rezone to RRC as a new docket item if need be. And so I think, Commissioner, I think you're right on. I think the timing potentially works. Again, any of that rezone in the area is going to be a heavy lift, but to the Assistant County Manager's earlier point, we'd like to, if possible, proceed with the items that have a clear path and reach out to the applicants that may not have as clear a path to see which way they'd like to go next.
So, yeah, I mean, I just want to emphasize that there's clear, like the clearer path has two elements of it. It's a clearer path because the data supported the UGM subcommittee recommendation and has that recommendation. And it's a clearer path because the environmental issues aren't going to be prohibitive cost-wise for us. If we bundle all these together, what we're going to get is a deeper, longer environmental review and a possibility of nothing getting approved in 2024. I do not want to prejudice. I've been frustrated for years now, I can say, for years on how long we've taken to get the Grand Mountain projects done. I don't want to prejudice two projects that have really good projects that have a very clear legal path forward and a financial path for the county, because we know there's a reason why we didn't approve CPED's professional services budget request. We didn't have the money. So here's a path forward for 2 of the most promising of the projects. Not thrilled by having the other 2 not go forward, but one of them I don't think on a legal basis is going to get forward. I mean, Deskins, if you look at it, he's asking for arterial commercial. If you remember from our internal review, we have a ton of arterial commercial zoning within the UGA already. Plus, if you look at the parcel of 76 acres, 80% of it is encumbered by wetland and creek. Why you would put that many acres into a UGA that can't ever be developed, I don't even really understand. So I don't think that one's ever going to get forward. If we approved it, I think it would get overturned on appeal. Jackson, I don't have an opinion about. And if we had money, I'd say let's do separate analysis of that. And as soon as we do have money, I'm okay with examining that one. But right now we don't have the money, and it doesn't have that legal path forward. So I would personally like to go with kind of what staff was suggesting, and again, split these projects, get the 2 that we know can get done based on the money we have and the legal foundation we have. We know we can get these 2 done in 2024, and I think that's really important to the UGA overall and to the applicants that have been waiting. I mean, Ms. Wilmofsky, who's been here all morning, has literally been waiting for over a decade.
So what if I'm hearing your explanation right, sir, that it sounds like if we put all 4 of them together, we're jeopardizing the 2 that we want to go. Why can't we split those 2 up so they go ahead and split it off? Now you're saying we don't have money. I don't care if we have money. I want those applicants on those type of complicated issues to pay the bill. And then we don't need to use taxpayer money. We can go ahead with those 2 readily available, successful projects, it sounds like. And we have another path moving at the same time. If those applicants want to pay the way, move forward with it. If they don't want to pay, then I guess we'll have to wait.
If those applicants, you know, had full disclosure that they have a very difficult legal path forward and they would like to have the review done and they want to pay for the review, I guess that's not inconsistent with what I'd like to see. So I'm not against you on that.
I'm kind of late to this discussion, but I did attend one of the kind of on-site planning. What was it like? Oh, when you're down at the Marriott there, one of the open houses, and by far the most controversial, as I recall, thing being proposed was rezoning the Deskin property. Like it was, if you were huddled around one poster board, that's where everybody was, and it was contentious for a lot of the people that live in that area. So, I mean, not only is it, I'm hearing legally questionable, it's also something that we would want to tread lightly with because it's fairly controversial for that side of the freeway.
I guess as a follow-up to that, I have no problem with that philosophy basically moving forward. Because if it is not legally possible for whatever during the restriction process, it's more than likely not going to happen. And as long as the county taxpayers aren't funding that process moving forward, it's up to the property owner to make that happen to his benefit.
But then there's staff time involved in something that's not
Well,
popular and we can't afford.
Except if he's paying for it, then we
That
find
doesn't
out.
create more staff time just because he creates more money, though.
Well, no, I'm saying if the applicant pays for it, they pay for the staff time and everything involved, not just the staff time.
So apart from what Commissioner Mejia said about moving all four simultaneously, it does sound that what I'm gaining from this is that there's somewhat of a consensus to move the two on the west side forward because it has the greatest level of success to actually get done in 2024, and then direct staff to have those follow-on conversations with Jackson as well as Deskin to really kind of pursue those same questions. Because I think even if going back and looking at those properties, we kind of, I think, would be well-served, and so would the applicants be well-served related to the Jackson property and the zoning that they're requesting and what they actually would really be able to do. Because we know from our industrial land study that, one of those big impediments is access to utilities. And so outside of the UGA and what is actually available to that property would be a limitation to what could be done under the zoning that's currently requested. And then with Deskin, I mean, there's a possibility, like, it could be something else that would actually still meet their needs. Because if you look at the configuration of those parcels and the way that they kind of protrude into the wetland areas, maybe there's a better way of approaching it.
A boundary line adjustment.
Boundary line adjustment, reconfiguring the lots so that you're only dealing with a portion that is actually able to be
And
developed.
that'd be
So
up to
there's-
the applicant to make that happen.
Correct.
It's currently a large farm as well. I think there's some consideration that should be given to that.
Well, how about we agree to move the first two forward as expeditiously as we can, and then have staff come back to us too, in terms of how the board can give direction on Jackson and Deskins after exploring these questions. Is that a good approach for today? I know
That was Rob's recommendation, so I'm.
and we could go Commissioner Edwards' way, or we could go a different way.
But at least we're not holding up the two.
Yeah, we're not holding up the other two, and you guys know what you need to do to get those going. Because I
Okay,
mean,
so-
even a more limited environmental review, we know can still take a lot of time, and I don't want to, see.
So we'll go ahead and take a formal vote. Josh, did you have anything to say before we vote on this?
Yeah, no, I just want to say staff commits to reaching out to all four of the applicants and having those conversations, as Commissioner Edwards relayed, in terms, and we've heard the concept of applicants paying for studies and reports and all that kind of stuff in the past, and we will broach that subject as well. You have that commitment from us.
Okay, so then the recommendation from the board,
If I may, this should not be viewed as a formal vote. This is direction.
just a recommendation, a direction to staff.
To staff.
Okay, so for the direction to staff, we've heard a recommendation that two of the matters that were recommended by the UGA subcommittee be moved forward. Are there thumbs up on that? Commissioner Fournier, Commissioner Klaus, okay. Okay, so there's 5 fingers for that. And then for the Jackson and Deskins applications, the recommendation is for staff to reach out to them and go through the options that they have. I know from Deskins that he was asking these questions last year on, you know, I think he saw the writing on the wall and he was trying to look at other options. So now that he's got a formal recommendation from the UGA subcommittee, then I'm sure he's willing to look at other options and see what is available. So our commissioner is okay with staff reaching out to Deskins and Jackson.
Reporting back to
and
us.
reporting back to us with the options. 2, 3, head nod. Okay, 5 fingers. Perfect.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
And thank you to Commissioner Minster for serving on that UGM. It's appreciated.
Okay, next under Commissioner's item is the Quixote Village 2 request for property.
So, trying to move this very quickly, the board has been approached by Quixote Village, asking if the board would consider the Carpenter Road property being available to create Quixote Village 2. And just as a bit of background, the property the Quixote Village is currently on is county-owned property that Quixote Village leases from the county for $1 a year. So we could do the same type of arrangement. I am checking in with you before I meet with members of the Quixote Village Board, because if the board as a whole is not interested, I'd like to convey that, but if you are interested, I would take the next steps and meet with them to flesh out the proposal a little better.
How many units are we talking about?
I couldn't tell you, I have not met with them yet. I did not know if this was the way the board wanted to use this particular piece of property. It's been considered for RV parking, homeless facility. There was a recommendation from your prior county manager to purchase the little prefab tiny homes that we could use that property for. It's currently used as a staging area for public works because it's convenient, but there's not a lot of equipment stored there, so we could move that. And then we have been approached by Jazzcom to use that property for their new facility. So lots of options.
How many acres are there?
Oh, I don't have a lot of details for you today, but I can certainly get more information.
I would also like to hear from Keely Marino and Tom Webster on kind of this proposal and their thoughts. And that for me, I mean, I would feel a little bit more comfortable just hearing from.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, I want to hear more. I don't like making decisions without, when there's too many, well, I don't know about this or I don't know about that. I just like to hear a little more facts about it anytime we're going to do something like this is a long-term lease, annual lease. We're doing it once a year now with Coyote, but that'd be quite disruptive if we canceled things in the middle of things. So I don't know, just more information. I'm interested in it. But.
Great, and that's what I needed to hear. What more information do you want before because the members of the Coyote Village Board said, let's write this up. And it was like, hey, I haven't even talked to the board yet. So.
And I've gotten
what
reached
is it
out
you'd like
by
to know?
them, but yeah,
I'm gonna go back, kind of my fallback thing that I am always concerned about is setting priorities of who we serve. And my priorities are always women, children, and veterans, and then local folks first. They get to the head of the list. I don't like people coming from Kansas City and signing up for the full deal meal benefits and knocking off somebody that's fallen on hard times from our own community. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Commissioner Fournier, Commissioner Menser, Commissioner Klaus.
I'm tentatively supportive, so whatever is the next step of getting more information or answering commissioner questions is something I'm interested in.
More information for me, please.
I have a thought as well. I am in support of the proposal, but I would also like to hear more information. So if we could get Keely and Tom to brief us on this, that would be great. But overall, I'm leaning towards yes. I would like to start these conversations. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, so then,
So I'll contact Tom and Keely, and I don't know how much they know about this proposal, but maybe the next step is to connect them with the Coyote Village folks to figure out what the proposal actually is. And then if there's any other information commissioners would like around this, please let me know so that we can hunt that down.
oh, Commissioner Klaus, go ahead.
So procedural question real quick. If you aren't sure if Keely and Tom know much about this yet, I'm just wondering what's the typical procedure? It sounds like this is coming directly from the Coyote Village board, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was run through our staff. Is that correct? Could you clarify the process here? I'm just curious.
That is correct. The Board of Coyote Village has approached commissioners directly, which is not unusual, and the board is asking for staff to be involved. That's great, but the board could just as easily have chosen to go with the proposal from Coyote Village.
And just to clarify, Keely and Tom are aware, we've discussed this before, but just, so they are aware of this project. But we never were able to kind of really finalize. This was right at the beginning when they were probing. And so that's when I had mentioned it over to them. So Commissioner Klaus, they are aware. I mentioned it to them. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I apologize. How long would we be delaying the timeline on this proposal by having staff come brief us on it?
Will depend on time on the board's calendar. Right now, January is pretty much fully booked. I don't think there are any openings for work sessions, so this would be definitely coming back to you in February with additional information.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. It is 12:25, commissioners. I just kind of want to do a time check. We still have, we still have 2 more items on our agenda. And we do have a briefing starting at 1. Just wondering if you want to proceed and move forward, or if this is where you want to pause.
I have to say, I would like to hear what staff has about the quiet business, just because I think it can be pretty quick.
The planning agenda for Thursday, I can send out to you on an email.
You have a copy of it in your packet as well.
Ultimately, it'd be really great for the public works staff to get direction from the board if whether or not this is something that the board wants to put the time, energy, and resources into pursuit.
Yeah, and I guess one quick question, how did this end up on there? What, somebody send it through or staff?
There have been more requests from the community to commissioners, and as
I've had some.
One commissioner can't direct staff, we needed to bring it back to the board to get consensus.
I bet they can give us a quick update.
Okay. So we'll tackle that item.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director.
Matt Huntsman, County Engineer.
I think the update is there continues to be requests from the community regarding the board doing some type of a pilot even for a railroad quiet zone from staff's perspective. We're waiting for direction from the board. Original direction we got from the board was that we weren't moving forward. At that time, risk came and presented that we would not be able to be, the county would not be able to be insured for these types of structures.
Is there a reason risk isn't up here with you?
I'm happy to come.
Come on.
So there's
What's
been no
changed?
new, there hasn't been anything that's changed.
Nothing's changed. What are we doing?
Our understanding is that there's been discussions with individual board members that may be wanting to reconsider this, so.
Oh, I was told by somebody that there was some federal exemption on this. Nobody knows anything about that, huh? Okay, well, I don't know. I don't want to beat a dead horse to death. I want to help if I can, but the perimeters have been kind of laid out, I thought. So that's where I'm at. If we got something new to talk about.
It's a 2-to-1 vote. There's 2 new commissioners. So. Yeah, I've been contacted by people that are curious about these things. I know around like the Johnson Smokehouse, that intersection there's a lot of people that would love to see some quiet zone implementation, but I know nothing about these things,
So what it came down to is basically if the county were to implement a quiet zone, we're taking in 100% of the risk, basically, is what I heard, or the liability of these upgrades. So if something were to happen, we would take that risk, and this is not covered by insurance. Is basically what commissioners, or at least 2 of us, were kind of wary about, was just that insurance factor, because it wouldn't be covered by insurance. And that was, I mean, for my part, that was a huge concern, that it wouldn't be covered by insurance. And
the railroads don't care, and they're powerful enough.
They're exempt.
Yeah, they're so powerful, they're exempt from anything they want to be exempt from.
So it sounds like we will not move forward and do any additional work.
Commissioner Klaus, the individuals who are contacting us are in your district now, so I just want to know if you've been contacted or if you have any thoughts on this.
Mine as well.
I do not believe I've been contacted about this issue, so I don't have a lot of background other than what's discussed right now.
So maybe could we do kind of a
maybe just a 30-minute work session just to brief the two new commissioners on this item and kind of. Not right now.
I saw him looking at a watch. I'm like, no, not wood. We'll put in a request.
Just
a briefing
something, just a short, and it can just be with the two new commissioners. I think the three of us have heard that information, but just for maybe it's just a meeting instead of a work session, just a meeting between Commissioner Fournier.
I'd like Commissioner Klaus to speak to her constituents there, and if she's not convinced that it's the right thing to do, I'm willing to drop it, but I would like to see what her position is once she hears all the information, and then, and the information that staff will provide on the risks and all that, so, and if she wants to bring it forward to say, look, I want to revisit that discussion, then we should do that, and if she doesn't, she doesn't.
Sounds good, and then but you know, just again, we just heard from Commissioner Fournier about the Johnson Point Smokehouse.
Maybe he's got some constituents.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some eggs in
so
this.
then-
What I have in this? Horses
Dog
in
in
the
the fight?
Dog, I don't like that one.
Eggs in a basket.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think this was one of the issues that we brought forward, right? We're opening up you know, if we do one, then there's gonna be others that come along, and what funding are we setting aside, and the liability of all of that, and the risk that the county is taking on without being covered by insurance. So how much general fund do we have to set aside for something like that? Right.
I guess, I serve on one of our boards, our commissioner boards, with one of those folks that brought this forward over the last couple of years. And at a recent meeting, which I did not have time for discussion, and I bring this up because if that party happens to be watching, I'd like to have them know that, I was told, as I'm headed out on that deal, well, there's a new piece of federal legislation about covers all that litigation issue that you folks are worried about. So somewhere along the line, that has to be brought to the table. So if you're out there and you've got some new stuff, we better hear new stuff before we even contemplate.
Sure, you're gonna dig into that.
Definitely will.
If you haven't, I'm sure.
Yeah, and if they want to contact me, I've met with them as well, so they can just reach back out to me and let me know about that.
Get a hold of our staff.
Brian Muirhead?
So I'm sending, Mr. Muirhead has been contacting me. I was actually just sending an email looping in Commissioner Klaus so she could meet with them. Because they are her constituents, and.
Yeah, certainly if there's new information for us to look into.
If we're not going to entertain these, could we get like a very clear and succinct one-page thing that says why, what it is, why we choose to take the position we take, and make that available?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we would not convey what the board's position is, but we would say here's what that entails, here are the risks associated with that, here's what's covered, here's what's not covered.
The county's position.
Simple one-pager. Yeah. Put in there, we'd love to help, but we can't under certain situations, so.
Contact your railroad at 1-800 Pacific.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll get a half-hour lunch?
Yeah.
They could just decide not to blow through that neighborhood if they.
No, I think they have rules about when they have to
unless
approach.
there are physical,
That's the thing, is the quiet zone is, they're whatever.
They
300
pass all liability, they shift all liability.
At 2 miles, honk twice. At 1 mile, honk 5 times. And then if we put in some type of things, structures, then they're able to. Then they don't have to blow the horn.
Yeah.
So we still have the liability if somebody blows through the intersection.
if someone drives around it.
There's a candlestick that gets knocked down.
We're snow plowing roads and we knock a candlestick down and then somebody blows through it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, it is 12:35. We are adjourned, and we'll be picking up at 1:15.